Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at any time, or whether you watch or listen to your podcasts, it's so nice to have you along for the experience. And this week, we have a sponsorship as a schus for the donors family. They want to be anonymous. I have the schus of knowing a number of members of the family. And listen, I wish everybody well. I want you to have bracha and hatzlacha and yeshiva nefesh and shalom and alle gute Sachen, as they say. Yeah. So we're talking about shidduchim, and we've talked at length about two issues, namely clarifying what are your values, number one. And number two, making sure that you're able to communicate this to the shadchan, right? And like I say, the shadchan doesn't have to be an official position. It could be somebody who the two of you know, etc. We discussed shadchanim the last time and what you would ideally look for and things like that. So now we're ready to move forward, right? You have a suggestion. Presumably, it's been checked out already, right? If the shadchan knows his job, knows him and knows you. But caveat emptor, as the expression goes, you have an obligation to check for yourself. We mentioned last time some things that people check into that, to me, does not seem like really important issues, but basically you're going to check in to see whether or not the person is a nice person, they're good people. Rabbi Hauer has this marvelous video that he made with somebody about looking into a shidduch, and they're asking this question and that question. At the end they say, well, are they nice people? He says, I tell you the truth, nobody ever asked me that. I've spoken to Hasidim on this subject. Hasidim say, listen, we look at it from the point of view that there are two families. They have their children's best interest in mind. They arrange things as best as they can. And, they look into both people. And then a lot of the work has been done beforehand for you, because the assumption is that your parents know each other. So you meet, one time, two times if you're a little bit of a modernisha, and that's it. You have the rest of your life to get to know each other. I was speaking to an older single who said to me, listen, I can't imagine my parents could do much worse than I've done at this point. So it's an approach. It's an approach. I've spoken with Hasidic couples who have married many years, and they use this method, and it works for them. But it could be sometimes that the parents have their own agenda. It's a reality. Yeah, there are certain parents who live vicariously through their children. It is. I know people who are master mechanchim, and when it comes to their own kids, forget about it. Why? Because they're too invested. They're not able to move back. They see themselves in their children. They see themselves in the shidduch, as opposed to just the kid. Yeah. I mentioned this story, where one of my son-in-laws was upset that I didn't fahir him enough. I said, listen, I don't have a issue to give you. Okay, my daughter has to be happy with you. I said, I'm not looking for son-in-law to take over my mom. If you know how to tell some funny stories, I'll try to get you a few gigs, but that's not what I'm looking for. Yeah. So when a person is, you check into them. And like I say, you're looking into all these different considerations that we've discussed already. All right? Okay. You do your own checking. I have a daughter who's very good at checking. And she says she never calls any of the names on the resume because they've all been trained her to say. She finds her own sources and goes around and looks to get the story. And sometimes the story that she discovers is dramatically different than the story that was told by the other people. Sometimes when you have a friend on the inside, they'll share information with you. I had a boy learning at Pikli Yeshiva, and I was friendly with the Yeshiva, and he says, because it's you, I'll tell you the truth. And I've gotten letters from people since we've been discussing this of, this woman, she was divorced twice, and she says, and both times the Rosh Yeshiva knew what the problems were and hid it. Both times, So, what can I tell you? You have to do your checking the best that you can. Okay, now, work with me here. You're going out now. You're going to go out. You checked into this person. You're going to go on a date. I told this story, but I'll repeat it because it ties in with what we're talking about here. A Hasidic Rebbe said to Rav Matisyahu Solomon, who's the Mashiach in Lakewood, says, I understand the Mashiach doesn't travel on Route 9 when he's leaving Lakewood. So the Rebbe said, it's true. So he says, why? He says, there are places there that are not tzenua, and I don't feel comfortable driving past them. He says, the Mashiach has such sensitivity to these matters. He says, I tried. He says, and yet you let your boys go out on dates unsupervised? Now, let me tell you his answer first before we discuss the subject. He says, this is what he said. He says, you're right. You're right. But the Gedolim who came after the war found a Churban in Tznius, a Churban in Shabbos, a Churban in Kashrus. And they knew they couldn't fight on every front. So they decided just to concentrate on Limud Torah. And they put all of their emphasis on building yeshivas and building the day school movement. That's where they put all of their emphasis. And other things they didn't focus on. Which is what he was saying is, you're right. Ideally, the way they used to date in Europe, nobody ever went out to a lounge. Nobody did anything. They had sit-in dates. Yeah. And apparently that was felt to be the most ideal way to do it. So today, like I say, but Hasidim, maybe in certain circles, but most places that don't have, you go out on a date. That's the way they do it. So let's talk about that. In Eretz Yisrael, it's really very simple. There are many, many hotels in Yerushalayim, and the boy and the girl agree through the shadchan to meet in a particular hotel lobby. This sometimes causes some awkward interactions because since they've never met before, and there may be more than one couple meeting there, you have to make sure that the right guy has found the right girl. There are many stories. I won't go into them. There are many stories where the wrong ones met, or a fellow realized who it was and pretended that he wasn't him. And okay, it doesn't make a difference, right? In an ideal setting, the two of them find each other. They sit down at a table. They order a drink, and that's the evening. There's a first date has a certain time limit to it. The idea being just to get to know each other, etc. The other advantage to this is obviously that it involves very little expense. You don't have to spend a lot of money in this circumstance. Yeah, it's a drink. Now, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story that I find astounding. And I had a Talmud who only dated here in Israel. And he didn't come from a family of money, and he didn't have a lot of money. And he went to America to date. And he says, can't afford it. He says, it costs a fortune to date here. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you can't just go to a local place. You have to take it to Manhattan. He says, I don't own a car. Which means I have to rent a car. The girl's not going to come with me on a bus or a subway. I have to rent a car. I have to go to Manhattan. I have to pay tolls. I have to pay for parking. We go into a lounge, order a drink. It's a lot of money. Drinks are expensive. He says, I could drop $100 on the first date. He says, that's just the first date. After that, you can't just go out and have a drink. You have to do something. I said, what does that mean? He says, archery, go-karting, you have to do an activity. This is considered obligatory. Otherwise, you get a reputation, and you're a cheapskate, and you're not a good date. And I said, it can't be. He says, you go out on just a few dates and can work out to be an enormous amount of money. Like I say, in Eretz, you go to one hotel lobby. Second date, you go to another hotel lobby. Next date, you go to a third hotel lobby. After 3 dates, it's sort of getting serious. Now you might go to the zoo, go for a walk, you have a day date, go to a park, X-rays. I said, are they looking for a husband or a camp counselor? I don't understand. Like, you're going to take them with activities? I said, this can't be. So at the time, I was giving a shiur, former Talmidot, on the phone. There was no Zoom back then. Yeah, it was a phone shiur. And I told her what this boy said. I said, could this possibly be true? And there was silence. And then one of the girls said, well, we have to pay money also to get, dressed up and put on makeup. I said, well, 1 second. Let's go slow here. Okay? You want to marry a boy in learning. This is a boy who's going to be sitting and learning. You want to be Meiser Nefesh for a boy in learning. And you expect him to drop hundreds of dollars on the first few dates? Money that when you get married and you're sitting and learning, you could spend on, food, electricity. But more than that, what's nice about the hotel method is it's one step above a sit and date, because the two of you are basically sitting there and talking. There is nothing else to do. And as these girls explained to me, that's the problem. What happens if the conversation drags? If the two of you are allowed to talk about? Not everybody knows what to talk about. Not everybody's a conversationalist. Famous story. This boy's going out on a date his first time. Says to his Rebbe, because I never talked to a girl. What do I talk about? He says, ask her about her family. Okay, what else? Ask her what kind of things she likes. Okay, what else? You can always discuss philosophy. It's okay. So they go out and they sit down. So, do you have a brother? No. So, do you like pasta? No. If you had a brother, would he like pasta? Now, okay. The Chazal tell us that of the 10 midos of dibur, the 10 measures of speech, women got 9 of them. Women have more of an ability to be oral. The part of the brain which controls speech is stronger in women than it is with men. Men don't talk as much. Someone sent me an email once with a long list of differences between men and women. One of them said 2 men can sit and watch a football game for 3 hours without either one of them saying a word. and neither one thinks that the other one must be angry with me. But girls, like, if there's no conversation, they're like, So this fellow went out with a girl, and she has an entire date planned. The whole conversation goes from topic to topic to topic to topic, seamless. So in case the guy doesn't talk, so fine. So she did her whole routine. Now, she came from out of town. She went out with a number of boys. And she got a little confused. So when she went out with him the second time, she also had a second date routine. If she figured if I have to carry the date more than 2 dates, then. So it was the second date, and she got a little confused, and she did her first date routine again. And the guy was just amazed. He was just watching. He says, "What?" And she's going to talk about it. Yeah, it was perfect. It was about that. At the end, he says, "Wow, that was so nice. It was as much fun as the first date when you said the same exact things." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, I felt like, I did her injustice, so I have to marry her now." So, there's, people have difficulty carrying dates, and they might be able to carry it, right? But so if you need activities to distract you from the date, then what's the purpose? I understand if the two of you going out and the whole thing is focused on talking, but if you're spending the whole time, like, practicing archery, going to do some activity, I don't get it. Now, my personal observation. The skills that makes a person a good date does not necessarily make them a good spouse. Yeah? Because although you may go out on a date and find the person fascinating and engage in clever conversation and things like this, most of life is not like that. I admit I used to read personal ads. I get a kick out of them, Do you like skiing and eating Chinese food? Okay, so unless you live in the mountains of China, how often is that going to happen? And are those really the things that you're looking for? But people, people want to go out and be entertained and find everybody entertaining. So I very much suggest the first date that, number one, does not cost a lot of money, and number two, it's just focused on conversation. Yeah. I don't know why a lot of people find going out to eat extremely awkward. People are afraid to eat. People eat too much. People this, I don't know what it is. There used to be a restaurant in Flatbush called Shanghai. This was when I reached, I would take someone out for dinner and go to Shanghai. It was a Chinese restaurant. And I don't know why, you'd think after some point I'd figure out not to dip the Chinese noodles into the duck sauce, but I always dripped it on my tie. Every single time. You'd think, okay, just don't eat the Chinese noodles with the duck sauce. I don't know. That's the main reason you go out to Chinese restaurants, is for the Chinese noodles with the duck sauce. There was a fellow who had a Chinese restaurant here in Israel. And they don't sell those Chinese noodles here. So what they would do is when they would make their spring rolls with what was left, they would put it on top of an upside down pot so that it would get hot and crunchy. They'd break it off and break it into pieces. And that was Chinese noodles. And they would put out a little bowl on the table. He says, when I have these Americans, they keep saying, more Korean, boy, more. I don't have that many. Because then I went to America and I went to a Chinese restaurant. They've got a 50-pound bag in the back. They just keep filling it up. I had to make it myself, There's a consideration, But like I say, a person goes out and they have a drink, etc. Now, the Jewish Observer, Oliver Shalom, had a issue dedicated to shidduchim, and a bacher wrote in a question and said like this, and I thought it was very interesting. Why, when I'm dating and I'm being encouraged to find the person that I want to build an emes bayis neman b'Yisrael with, I'm encouraged to go to places that if I went to as a bacher, I would get thrown out of yeshiva. And I thought, what a brilliant insight. It's really true. People go to a lounge, which is just a fancy name for a bar, and it's like, is this really the place that we want to be? I started dating, so I asked people, where you go? So they told me, you go to the Olive Tree in Greenwich Village. I don't know if this place still exists anymore. It was the only place I knew to go, and it worked out well because I never got a second date with anybody anyway because I was too intense. So, but the tables were made out of slate. They give you a little bowl of chalk, and you could write on the table. You could rent games. They had old Charlie Chaplin movies playing in the background. It was considered very hip. You see all these like Greenwich Village type people, and then 2 or 3 couples wearing suits and ties and hats. Sitting at the table, a little out of place, and you go there. The idea being that you could order a drink and you could play hangman on the table, and you can draw a picture and then analyze it and find out that you're out with a psycho killer. I guess you could rent a game if things got real slow. And that was the only place I knew how to go. Now, I can't say that this was a positive atmosphere for anybody to be in, but like I say, every time I went, there were at least 3 couples there. It was one time I had a hot streak. I went out with like 3 or 4 girls. I don't know what happened, and we show up in the Olive Tree. The waitress comes over and says, "What would you like?" "You again? Who's this?" Oh gosh, as awkward moment. This guy I was telling you about, he says he was English, and he would go out with like these American girls, and they'd be sitting in the hotel lounge, whatever it is, in here in Yerushalayim, And the conversation lulled a little bit, and she goes, "Uh-oh, awkward silence." We still know that story. Okay, there we go on the first date. What are you looking for? 2 variables that nobody can define for you. Nobody can define for you. The first is attraction. Do you find this person attractive or not? Yeah. There's no correct answer to that question. Somebody says to me, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Okay. And there's no question that there are people, and every one of us have seen situations like this, where a guy is considered gorgeous and gets set up with all these gorgeous girls and ends up marrying a girl who's not so gorgeous. And a girl who's considered gorgeous and she ends up marrying a guy who is not so gorgeous. But they find each other attractive. So what are you going to say? You're wrong? This American that I know went out with this Israeli. He wasn't very Israeli. She was very Israeli. And she wasn't what would be called attractive in the traditional sense of the word. And I said, "So you're getting married to this girl?" And he says, "Yeah, she dresses really well." Okay. I can hear that. No, I really can't. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Because you could go out with an attractive person and make, wardrobe suggestions. But that seemed to work for him, There are certain girls, they say a chenadik, right? That means that it doesn't matter whether or not they're attractive in the traditional sense. They have something about them that people just like them. And there are very attractive women that people just don't like. There's something about them that's off-putting. Maybe it's the way they wrinkle their nose at you. Or make it look like they just ate a lemon. What? What is it? Oh, gosh. When I was younger, I was an advisor on some teen trip, or whatever it was, There was this one sour-faced advisor. She was sour the whole time, And then about halfway through, she goes to me and says, you're funny. I was like, okay. No, you're really funny. I said, thank you. No, there are people who think they're funny and they're really not. You are funny. You're funny. I have to say that the compliment was somewhat lost on me. A lot of it goes in the delivery. Yeah. That's the famous joke. Everyone knows that joke. When I was in prison, they had one joke book. So everybody had memorized the jokes. So a guy would stand up and go, number 23, and everybody would laugh. So as we get over 64, so he says, what's going on? He says, yeah, everyone knows the jokes. He says, give the number, and they laugh. He says, can I try? He says, go ahead. He gets up and he goes, 19. Nobody laughs. He says, what happened? He says, some people don't know how to tell a joke. But listen, who can say? I can't. There is no way of knowing this beforehand. And what can I tell you? When it comes to attraction, that's something. Right now, I want to break this into three categories. There's somebody that you find attractive. There's somebody that you don't find attractive, but you don't find them unattractive. And then there are people who you really find unattractive for whatever reason. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a great reason. Yeah. I knew a guy who was going out with a girl who was a redhead, and he just couldn't handle it. He eventually broke it off. He couldn't handle being married to a redhead. It's just, he had a thing. Is it objective? It's objective. That's how he felt. For him, he didn't find it attractive. Guess he was missing a bit of the Irishman in him. That's, different people find different things attractive, This guy was not tall, but he was on the taller side, and he went out with a girl, and she was very short, and he just didn't feel comfortable. He didn't feel comfortable. She was too short. She was otherwise attractive, but so this is the second date policy. Certain people have a rule. You always have to go out on a second date. Now, I'm always nervous about rules, as you could probably tell. Yeah. So I want to make a hagdor. It was only one time I ever called into a radio talk show in my entire life. Yeah. It was Sunday morning. I was working, whatever it is. And there was some show on where they were doing a restaurant review. This is a restaurant reviewer who was talking. So I called up. I went through immediately. Otherwise, I would have just hung up, And I said, when you walk into a restaurant and you order 20 dishes, aren't they going to get suspicious? So they all started laughing. And he said, you never go in by yourself. You go in with a party of 4. And you never write your review based on one visit. Because it could be they were having a bad night. Everybody has a bad night. So you always have to go 2 or 3 times with a group of people. And then over the course, you've tasted everything on the menu. So I thought, if you can't write a restaurant review on one visit, then probably you can't judge whether or not a person is a good person or not on one visit. Having said that, I didn't ask him this question, but having said that, I'm sure there are certain restaurants that he walked into, and after just one visit, he was pretty sure that he was never going to eat in this place again. It was pretty obvious, whatever the reason might be. But, sometimes the issues are so glaring that it doesn't really follow through a second time. So let's say I go out with a person and I really don't find them attractive. And people say, well, just give it a second date. So, okay, if it's your parv, I understand it. But if you really don't, I don't think you're doing the perfect person service. Because if you go out with them a second time and you're just not attracted to the person, you're not going to be any more attracted the second time. So what are you doing? Just leading the person on? Listen, there's so much fantasy that goes into from dating. Why? Because it's not like somebody sets you up with somebody and you go out. First, you check them out. Then they check you out. Then they start hearing about the person. And then they start becoming emotionally invested in this person they haven't even met yet. It's unbelievable. By the time they go out, they're already so invested in this relationship that if either one of them says no, they feel like they've just been jilted by their intended. You know what I mean? Like they're getting a divorce. They were so invested. I see girls who try out the guy's name beforehand, and writing it down to see if they like the way it looks. That's a level of commitment and investment. It's too much for a first date. So if you see for sure that this is not going to go, I don't see what the purpose is of a second date. That's me personally. Certain people have a shita, you always go out a second time. People will tell you who've dated a long time that there is an issue of burnout that takes place. After a while, there's just so much of this. As one of my former students said to me, if I have to get dressed up and put on makeup for one more loser, I'm going to kill myself. Evidently, it's too much of an emotional commitment for some people. But the Shadchan says, this time it will be different. I said to him, I've heard those words before. But the family's nice. Oh, believe me, this one's special. I said, all right, but only just once more. What do you care? Go out. The answer is, after a while, you start to get burnt out. And you go in waiting to see which one will say it was not meant to be. Yeah. So if I go out with a person and I realize this is a low baba cheshbon, nothing to talk about. So the first thing is, do you find the person attractive? And the second thing is personality. I can't tell you when it comes to personality. All right, now, I've mentioned this in the past. I, by nature, am a very shy person. How do you know I'm a shy person? Because when I go to Simcha here in Eretz Yisrael, I look for an empty table. And I sit down. They give me my plate of choice, not choice, but there's 3 starches. They have a bareka and potato kugel and, an Yerushalmi kugel, and maybe some, stir-fried vegetables that have sort of lost their appeal, I sit there by myself and I sit for as long as is considered appropriate. And then I, say Mazel Tov again, and I slip the envelope or the book and I leave. I don't socialize. If somebody comes over to me and says, oh, are you Rabbi Orlofsky? I was like, oh, yeah, And then they start talking so I can, become this more professional persona. But as a person, I'm extremely shy. In fact, my good friend Chanukh Teller once sat me at a table at one of his chasanas in America, mistaking my public persona for my private persona, because there's a whole chachma to setting up the tables in America. Here in Israel, you don't set up the tables; you just show up, and there's that setting. Someone's going to be there for the first course, somebody else will be there for the main course, someone else will be there for dessert. There's a constant turnover of people coming in, staying for a little bit, wishing mazel tov, running around. In America, it's not like that. So you have to make tables. And you always try to put like one live wire at the table is going to carry the table. And mistakenly, he thought that was me. And I sit by myself. Sometimes I take a sefer, and I sit and I learn. And I'm not much of a conversationalist in a public setting. If somebody wants to talk to me and has a question for me, so I'm more than happy to enter in a conversation and discuss things. But on my own, I'm just that same awkward little kid that I was in elementary school. I was a nerd. I was a loser. I really haven't changed. That's who I am. I just have this public persona that I assume. So a lot of people saw me in my public persona where I'm standing on a chair leading the ruach. You know what I mean? And assumed that's who I am in my essence. And they would set me up with these, really loud, funny girls, and I had nothing to say the whole night. It didn't matter. They carried the show. And it would have been good if I was looking for a partner, a Costello to my Abbott, a Hardy to my Laurel. That would work out great. But I really wasn't. I'm by nature a quiet person, and I like to have extremely deep conversations, and that's what I enjoy. That's how I react. So, I would go out, and there wasn't anything wrong with their personality. Chas v'sholom. It just wasn't meant for me. Certain people are argumentative. And I see people who go out, and the two of them just argue each other the whole time. And they love it. They love arguing. Other people get very put off by that. They don't want to argue. Some people just have very civic personalities, This is a nice place. Oh, yeah? Why? What's nice about it? Well, I don't know. I thought it's nice to go. You think so? I haven't remodeled this place in 17 years. You like this? You think this is nice? All right. I want to get a drink. Get a drink. I mean, the thing is overpriced, but I don't care. If you want a drink, I'll get you a drink. I'm not going to order anything because I'm not going to spend this kind of money on a drink. Whatever, a drink. In fact, I brought along a bottle of water for myself. And yet these people get married. There are people who are very quiet. Very quiet. So where do you learn? I'm in the mirror. And have you been there long? About 3 years. And what medication do the doctors have you on? Several. Are there other people who don't mind? They don't mind quiet people. Some people don't like loud people. What am I going to tell you? There's an absolute here? There's not. There's a range. So, and nobody can make this decision for you. So you're going out on the first date to see whether or not I find the person attractive. And like I say, it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, wow, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. But I don't find the person unattractive. Looks can grow on you like a fungus. And whether or not I find their personality interesting. It could be that we, after a while, I'll find that. But there are certain people you can tell right away, like, whoa, Zelo Halech. And I'm not talking about, like I said at the beginning, like a restaurant that's just having an off night. So there are certain people who might be having an off night. There might be a thing. All right? The Stipler went out with the Chazon Ish's sister. So he says calls him up afterwards. He says, listen, she says you slept the whole day. He says, I know, I came in by train. And I stayed up the whole night because I figured I would sleep on the train. And when I got to the train, I was afraid that the seats might be shotness. So I stayed up the whole train ride. I stood the whole time. So by the time I got there, I hadn't slept in a day, So okay, so it's a reasonable explanation. They go out a second time, it's a lot better. Yeah, a lot better. They got married. Yeah, but okay, so they have a bad night. It happens, But like I say, you eliminate the extremely improbable. Although anything can happen, that's not the way that we make decisions in life. We make decisions based on probabilities. Yeah. And unless there's some extenuating circumstance for me to assume that this was just so off kilter, then you have to make that decision. Now, if you go out with the person and you find them intelligent and attractive, and that's definitely worth a second date, right? Because there's another thing that you need. And I'm speaking here as from the Litvish community, because Rabbi Twersky wrote an article in that issue, the Jewish Observer, and he says, I feel so bad for you, Litvisha. You feel like you can't get married unless you've developed a meaningful relationship. So you have to go out, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. You can't develop a meaningful relationship in 10 dates. You can't do it in 3 months. It takes a lifetime. He says, by the Hasidim, we don't care. We don't even try. We see if everything looks matim, and we know we have the rest of our lives to build a relationship. And Litvish, you have to feel something. Yeah. So even though you find the person attractive and you find them nice personality, you need chemistry. And this is such an impossible word. How do you define that? It means that when you're not with the person, you would like to be with the person. If you never think about the person, if you never miss the person, there was a country western song, how can I miss you if you won't go away? Yeah. So if you never miss the person, then there's a problem. Now, how do you define that? I can't explain it. And when you have the Shadchanim or the Kalatesh, you'll say, listen, it's normal, you're putting too much expectations on, etc. It's just everything looks good on paper, everything's nice, you like them, fine, get married. Yeah. That is an approach. But my mother and my father said we'd learn to love each other. So Goldie, now I'm asking, do you love me? I'm your wife. I know. Do you love me? My father and my mother said we'd learn to love each other. Yeah. So do you feel anything for this person? If you broke it off, would you feel bad? That's my opinion. It's an opinion. I can't put that into words because I know there are plenty of people who get married without that. Yeah. But I feel like there's got to be something. Something more than, I have to admit I have grown fond of you over the years, my dear. That's just my opinion. Now, I want to leave you with the following question. Think for a moment. You've checked into this person and they've checked into you. You definitely want to get married. They definitely get married. You both have the same goals in life. You both have the same expectations of what you expect from a marriage. You go out with each other. You find each other attractive, personable, and there's a chemistry. How long at that point do you need to go out before I can say I'm ready? So I asked this question. I used to teach this in Neve Yerushalayim, and a girl said, you can't give a number. Can't give a number. I said, okay, 5 years. Date a guy for 5 years, and then he turns around at the end and says, I don't think so. Now you start again. No, that's too much. Okay, 3 years? 1 year? 6 months? Well, till you know the person. My sister-in-law told me about this couple that they had over their house for 3 years. They were dating. 3 years. They got married. They got divorced in the first month. He was a completely different person. They knew the families. They knew each other. He turned into a completely different person. So they get married. He managed to cover it up for 3 years. Are you sure? Someone said to me once, until you know, like you have to know enough about the person, like what their favorite color is. The time I'd been married for, I don't know how many years, I had so many children. I came home and said, honey, what's your favorite color? She says, I'm not sure. You can have children and grandchildren and never know the person's favorite color. That's really not the most important thing. We'll be married 39 years this Sivan. And even to this day, every now and then I'll tell a story. My wife's like, I never heard that one, you know? Still things to learn, still things to find out. I'm not going to tell you what the correct number is because I don't think there is an exact one. But if you hear about people who go out for 2 dates, 3 dates, and then get engaged and you think, whoa, how could that possibly be? It's because if you're in the secular world, you could be dating for years before either one even brings up the question, where are we holding in this relationship? And either one of them is afraid to bring it up because they don't want to scare off the other person. So you know where each one is holding. Yeah. I would sometimes go out with girls, from girls. They had such a nice time, but they didn't think I was, for them. And they wanted to keep a kesher. And I was like, no, I don't do that. We don't do that where I come from. That's not appropriate. I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a spouse to build a home together with. Yeah. But when a person knows, okay, I feel for this person. I find this person attractive. I enjoy their personality. We have the same goals in life. We're both ready to get married. When you find people who give, again, arbitrary, you can't make a decision until X number of dates or X numbers of weeks or X numbers of months or X number of years. I always say, why? Where are you getting that from? Some people are fast learners. They can figure out pretty quickly that, yeah, this works. And I know people who get engaged to the first person they go out with. And there's always friends who say, like, you should try somebody else, try other people, and have a little more experience first. How do you know what's out there? It's like, I don't understand, but this person is fine. This is everything I'm looking for. I like them, they like me. We have an attraction, we have a chemistry. Why should I now try something else? Like, what's the point? There's no way you're going to go out with everybody. There's too many people out there. So at the end of the day, you have to have bitachon. So I'm not going to tell you what the right number is. I just want to explain for people who might look at the community and say, how could it be after 3 days that people know are ready to get married? That's the idea I want to bring across. All right. So that's it for this podcast. We'll talk more in the next one. I'm going to get a little technical now because we want to get into the engagement and the planning the wedding and all kinds of nifty things like that. But I hope I've given you enough background, at least for you to get started. So if you want to find out more about this podcast, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can comment, you can write a note, you can sponsor an episode. And that's it for now. I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.